An item that caught my eye in the news today was about some of the local buses, and well, the story starts actually on a visit that we made back last year to the Cemex factory. The Cemex factory was a cement factory in Lloseta, and Cemex went bust or closed down, and they didn't know what to do with the site. So eventually they came up with this wonderful idea to generate hydrogen. So that's what it turned into, and they spent a lot of time building the cells that were going to generate the hydrogen. They set up a solar park to provide the electricity. So it's green hydrogen. It's the best sort of hydrogen you can possibly have because it doesn't pollute the environment at all. And in December of 2021 they actually started their pilot production. It was something I was very excited about. It's something I used to talk to the children about at school. And by March that production had increased. The idea was that the hydrogen would be used to be piped to the hotels and businesses in the north of the island around the Alcudia area, and there it would be used for heating, for cooking, and it would actually be mixed with the natural gas that was being used. But people in Palma saw that the hydrogen was being produced on the island. It's one of the biggest hydrogen producing plants in Europe, and they thought, well, we can benefit from this too. And so they had the wonderful idea of bringing in some hydrogen buses. And in March 2022 the first 3 arrived, a total of 5 altogether, and with a little bit of fanfare and the mayor standing in the middle of the street showing off these new hydrogen powered buses. There's a great advantage to hydrogen. The hydrogen produces no pollution whatsoever. So the old diesel buses, even the gas buses that we have in Palma, they all produce carbon dioxide and the other pollutants. Hydrogen produces no pollution whatsoever. The only thing it produces is water, and not only is it water, it is absolutely pure water, so it's very, very clean. So these buses arrived, and the idea was that they were going to be using the hydrogen that was being left over from the power plant in Lloseta. That's where the hydrogen was going to be generated. These buses are electric buses, and the way that they work is that instead of having a battery like the cars that we see on the road, the Tesla type cars, they use lithium-ion batteries. It's a chemical, it's very, very expensive, and they need to be charged up every day. They've got a limited range. These buses were using fuel cells, and that's a different technology altogether. It's not new. It helped send Apollo 11 to the moon, which we've just had the celebration of its landing on the moon recently. And so they used fuel cells back in the 1960s to provide them with electricity. The development of fuel cells, to my mind, was a little bit slow, and NASA and other space agencies didn't really follow it up so well because they were using solar panels. Solar panels became cheaper, they became easier to use, and they would generate the electricity. And so the need in space for fuel cells declined. Other companies, Toshiba for example, did actually produce some fuel cells to be used in laptops. Laptops have always had a problem. I remember my first laptops, if it lasted an hour it was doing really well. And they designed a fuel cell that would fit into a laptop. Unfortunately, the fuel cell worked with methanol. It didn't work with hydrogen. Methanol is a liquid, so it's easier to use. The problem came when they wanted to take the laptops onto aeroplanes, and the airline said, no, you can't do that, it's dangerous. And so Toshiba didn't follow that one up. Well, more research has gone on. I think there is still a lot of interest in fuel cells and different fuels that can be used, the hydrogen one being the cleanest of all of them. And so we've got this hydrogen plant on the island. It seems only natural that we should have these hydrogen buses in Palma. Very clean, no pollution, and silent. They don't make any noise. There's no engine other than the electric motor whirring away. So great news, and off they went, and they bought these buses. They spent nearly €5 million on 5 buses. That's a lot of money. And the buses arrived. First one had a bit of a problem when it got here. It came off the ramp off the ferry, and they are very, very low, and it got stuck on the ramp, and they had to get something to pull it off. Eventually it came off, and we got the 5 buses on the island. But recently, in fact in today's news, we find that these 5 buses are all parked up in the garage. They are actually not being used. The question is, why? Well, it seems that the Lloseta plant is not producing enough hydrogen, or somehow the hydrogen's not getting to us. Hydrogen would have to be brought in from the mainland. That's a problem, because to transport hydrogen it has to be under high pressure, and there is a legal requirement for it to be for a limit, which means that they can only carry about 18% of the hydrogen capacity that they would normally have. Transporting hydrogen that way is not very efficient. And so if there's no hydrogen, then the buses can't be used. So it looks as though these buses are going to be stuck in Palma, doing nothing. €5 million has been spent. You might ask, what's happened to the tram? Well, the tram, which was from the previous government, they put all of this plan out to provide a tram that went from Plaza España all the way to the airport in a rather zigzaggy way, calling into lots of different places. And it all been costed out, the money had been found and produced, and there was money from central government as well. There were slight hitches about what was going to be the exact route, and what buildings needed to be bought in order to pass it through. Anyway, those are plans which could have been sorted out. But we've recently had elections, and the party that's won, which is the Partido Popular, have said, no, we're not going to do this tram. We're not sure whether it's the best idea. So they've not actually dismissed it completely. They've simply shelved it and said, right, we've got all this money now, what shall we do with it? We'll buy a whole load of electric buses. Not the fuel cell buses, but the battery buses. So they've decided to change the whole fleet of the local buses in Palma to battery power, and that's, well, I don't think it's started yet, but they've only been in power for about a month, and so we'll have to keep an eye on this and see what happens, whether we do actually get the battery buses and whether they actually do work that efficiently. So I'm not sure where we're going with this one. I'm going to have to keep an eye on this and see where you go. So it looks like the fuel cell buses are stuck in the garage. Another report I did find on the internet seemed to suggest that the problem was not necessarily the hydrogen, but the fact that the hydrogen had been contaminated. Fuel cells require a very expensive catalyst, usually platinum, and the catalyst works by carrying out the reaction on the surface, and if that surface gets contaminated in any way, then the catalyst is useless. And the report seemed to be suggesting that that might be the case. I don't know if that's true. I only found that in one place, but catalysts being poisoned by getting different materials into them, it is a factor which you have to bear in mind with a catalyst. So where are we going with the buses? Where are we going with the tram? It's early days. We've got a general election tomorrow. That probably won't have any bearing on this story, but may have in the future. So thanks very much for watching. Hope you found it interesting. It's certainly a topic that fascinates me, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video. Bye for now.